It's my belief that America is becoming a totalitarian country. It's becoming a police state. I want it to be like in The Wizard of Oz, taking off the curtain on the wizard to show who's running things, bring the American people a series of truths so they get it and they can start fighting for their freedom. Because as long as they're focused on the wrong objective, they're going to get free.
That you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We are very pleased to have with us Aaron Russo, who is the producer of a film just being released called America Freedom to Fascism. Many of you already may know Aaron from a lifetime of films that he has produced, well known as Trading Places with Eddie Murphy, Rose with Bette Midler. Aaron has been around LA for many, many years, as well regarded many in the film industry. And now he has taken on a project that is so important, not only for its entertainment value, but something actually more meaty, if you will. And that is the message it has to convey about what is going on in America. Aaron is, you could say, a real patriot. That's my sense of him. And as a result, he has made a film that is calling us all to pay attention to some of the underlying constitutional issues that we're facing as a he brings our attention to it exquisitely. So we're very glad to have Aaron with us today to discuss this film, which is just opening up across the nation this week, and to talk about what brought him of this film in the first place. So, hello, Aaron.
Hello, nice to be here.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very comfortable chair.
Good, I'm glad.
Good drinking water.
Comfortable.
And
the
after
purest in New York.
And after this show, we call the worst world.
Sometimes we say a bitter world.
A bitter world. That's good. I wish I would have thought of that.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I don't agree. Not with you on it, Aaron.
Thank
really
you.
not. Really
Thank
not.
you.
You're really making a difference in this film. What is it that got you first motivated you to make a film of this sort?
Well, there were a number of things that got me motivated to make the film. The first thing, it's my belief that America is becoming a totalitarian country. It's becoming a police state. It's headed into fascism. Isn't fascism. Fascism defined by Mussolini is big corporations and big government working together to suppress and stifle the people. And that's what we have in America today. And I felt my political knowledge and my movie-making skills should be combined into making a movie that can really educate the public to what the truth is about what's happening in America today. And Michael Moore, bless him, because he opened the door to make this movie in a sense, because 9/11 was such a big hit that it allowed documentaries to be viewed as feature films. And even though I didn't agree with Michael Moore with his movie and everything he said, I thought he made a wonderful film. But I think he missed of what the problems are. I think he contributed to the problems because he contributed to the polarization of America. Republicans versus Democrats, Democrats versus Republicans. And that's really
As though that's a meaningful distinction.
Right. Same. And they're controlled by the same people. And it doesn't matter whether George Bush is in office or Hillary Clinton is in office or John Kerry or Dick Cheney. The same events, the same things are going to happen. There'll be subtle changes. But the main thrust, the main tide of where America is going, whether it's Republican or a Democrat in office. And so Michael Moore opened the door, but I felt like I had to come in, or someone had to come in and really point out the truth, this polarization. I felt as if I wanted to be like in The Wizard of Oz, taking off the curtain on the wizard to show who's running things.
What's behind the veil.
What's behind the veil. And that's why I made the movie, to show what's behind the veil and bring the American people a series of truths so they get it and they can start fighting for their freedom. Because as long as they're focused on the wrong objective, they're going to get free. What they're focused on, this polar red state blue, is what the powers that want. They want people focused on fighting with each other.
You could say it's a distraction technique.
Yeah, it is. But they want blacks and whites not getting along. They like people being polarized because that takes the focus down to them. Nobody knows that the Federal Reserve System is a private bank. People think it's a federal agency, and it's not. And in 1913, the government, most gave the power granted to the Congress to create money for America to this private bank.
And it should be the U.S. Treasury.
Yes,
that's making them money.
The treasury, the government, yeah, and the government to this private bank.
Federal agency.
Yes, the Treasury is, and so this private bank in 1913 got the concession to make money for America. Now, when the government needed money, it had a bank, and then the income tax on the ordinary people, so the interest to the banks could be paid. You see?
So you're saying that the income tax functions as a method of interest to bank.
Exactly.
It is not there for building infrastructure, for paying troops, for doing providing books.
To a very small degree. See, before the Federal Reserve System, the government had never had to pay interest to make money. It could make money, create money. The problem the government had then was, if they made too much fiat, if they made too much money, then it would be inflationary.
Go beyond goals basing it.
It could. I'm saying the inherent problem of creating money is that you make too much of it, and you destroy the value of the currency. And that's a definite problem. But when you have a goal back, then that limits how much money you can make. So the goal that the government could make currency, but it was limited to how much. You see, so you had a very stable currency, and you had a loaf of bread costing the same thing in 1800 that it cost in 1910. And so,
in fact, the bread cost the same.
Yes, that was the same. Yeah, for 100 years, there was no difference in the consumer price index, except during the Civil War.
That's a way of really hitting home with this idea. From life, dollar high,
right?
But to think that it was the same cost of bread for that 100-year period is rather remarkable.
But even worse than that, you see. So whoever issues the currency without any backing behind it is going to be inflation, whether it's the government or the Federal Reserve. But the difference is, with the Federal Reserve, it's a lot worse, because not only do they issue money without any backing, the people incur. You see, it's a base system. So when money gets put into society, it's done through borrowing. So not only do you have inflationary, you also have massive debt at the same time. When the printed, there was no behind it. There was the danger of inflation, but there was the danger of debt. You understand?
It says Federal Reserve notes.
Right. Well,
which is essentially a promissory note, is it not?
Well, it's not a note, because they don't promise you anything for it. They give you anything. Federal Reserve is not. There's no reserve, and it's not really a note. So the whole thing is.
It doesn't sound so promising.
The whole thing is a sham.
Yeah.
And so I made the movie so that American people can understand the truth of how the federal works, and because they have the ability to make money out of thin air, they control the government. That also, whoever makes the money makes the rules. So because they make the money, and they're the ones who help finance the political campaigns through their corporate friends. See, you ask somebody, what's the largest corporation in America? They'll say Microsoft or Walmart. No, the truth is the largest corporation is the Federal Reserve System. They make the money for everybody. You see, and
it's a privately held corporation. Now, who are parties to that corporation?
Well, on the surface, the member banks own the stock. It's incorporated in Delaware, and the stock is held by the member banks. But the real question is
that
who owns
Citibank? Citicorp?
Citigroup is one of them. Yeah, Goldman Sachs. There's a bunch of them. A lot of foreign. England is part of it, but
so they're not individuals as such, except
they
the
are.
individuals
the people,
who are the CEOs of the banks.
No, wrong. There's also the voting shares, and a lot of that is held in trust. Who the stock these banks?
Isn't that a matter of public record?
No, it's not. It's not. And the other interesting thing about it is the Federal Reserve is not audited. No one knows where the money goes, what they do. See, and private banks money in America, and it's not audited. And they don't even tell you now how much money they're making. this year there was a measurement of money supply called M3,
Yes.
right? And then they stopped reporting M3.
It was the being printed per year.
Yeah. Everything,
Aggregate,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now the Federal Reserve said they're no longer going to publish M3. So the American people no longer have an idea of how their money is being debased.
How many circulation?
That's what debases the currency.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So they don't want the American people to know. And so,
how could the Federal Reserve Bank make that determination
Well,
and not Congress?
well, they shouldn't be able to. That's the point, because they own Congress. You know, if you've ever seen,
Where was Congress, Aaron, back in 1913?
they were home on vacation.
Enough present to make legislation.
Yeah, but they did vote in the legislation. But the problem is, Congress has no authority to turn over their responsibility to a third party, for one thing. And if they do that, it would take a constitutional amendment to make that acceptable. And even then, I'm not sure it would be acceptable. You know, but at the very least, you would need a constitutional amendment. There was never any constitutional amendment. Congress can't just say to the American people, "Oh, we're no longer responsible for money. We're giving it to the private bunch of guys to pay interest to make the money for our government." What is that?
Right.
And the interest can come from you, you know, from your labor. See and so.
Where was the in their head?
Oh, I wasn't.
What do you think they want to capitulate and give
Why?
up this?
A couple of reasons.
Yeah.
The first reason was that they're all bribed and paid off, for one thing. But more importantly than that, I think that because of the gold, by doing it this
The
way,
amount they could print was related to the amount of gold they had.
Yeah, exactly. It had a backing, and so by doing it this way, now they could buy as much money as they wanted. Restriction, the Federal Reserve could make whatever money they wanted, essentially.
And they were laying the interest debt on the people.
Right. And so now the government could borrow as much money and make as much as they wanted to make, right? And so it's the power of our government has been transferred from the people in Congress to these unelected bankers. And it's happening throughout the world. I mean, the Bank of England is a private bank. Private banks, and the Federal Reserve makes all these international agreements for our country, but there's nobody's approval. They don't have to tell Congress what they're doing, you know.
Is it done through the
Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, the Bank for International Settlements is the BIS is the central bank for all the central banks, and they meet every year in Basel, Switzerland, and they decide. So as I started getting this, I had heard for years that there was no law requiring people to pay an income tax. So I said, that's interesting, and that never went away. Here, as much as the IRS and so I said, that's a subject, tying the IRS and the Federal Reserve together. So I decided to make the movie because in speaking to IRS agents, they all tell me. So I decided to research it.
Themselves told you there is no law.
Absolutely. So when I decided to make the movie, I interviewed lots of people who know about this. I did a tremendous amount of research. And the discovery was the IRS has the power to tax the labor of the people because of the 16th Amendment. It's called the Income Tax Amendment, which they say was ratified in 1913. Well, we know it was never ratified, but that's beside the point. We have from each state. It was never ratified. Put that aside. It's just a fact, but doesn't change anything.
It's a huge fact.
Yes and no. Okay. It's a huge fact that there was that kind of deceit. The lack of ratification deserved a year. The truth is that in 1913 they started the income tax after the ratification, and in 1917 they had to stop it because in 1916 the Supreme Court said get the taxing power, they can tax the labor of the people. And that was said 8 different times by the Supreme Court. 8 times.
8 separate cases.
8 separate cases. The Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment did not give the government taxing power taxable 16th Amendment, you weren't taxable after the 16th Amendment. Okay? And that's Peck versus Lowe. And so you have all these cases, right? And so I said, wow. And I just look, well, where was the law? So people said, look at the IRS regulations. So I looked at the regulations, and they were kind of muddled and confusing. But I know one thing. The IRS, not law. So regulations have to be based on law passed by Congress, right? Because they don't have the ability to make law.
They can make regulations
I don't know that
under
already.
the guidance of law.
Exactly. I just law they claim they have, and there is no law. There was never
So
statute.
you're saying that everyone or so many people are paying income, yet the Supreme Court income wages
or labor. Yes.
And besides that, it wasn't ratified because that 16th Amendment offers no new taxation.
Well, that's the third pride because it was never ratified. Then the Supreme Court also said that you can't tax the labor of the people, and the 16th Amendment did not give the government that power. And then the third fact is Congress regulations labor and on all counts. What they do is they confuse people. You know, if you ask for the law, they'll never show it to you. But say go to the IRS website and look at our list of, that
Actually come up with this phrase, every American has to pay his or her
fair share. Well,
but that's just a propaganda line, is what you're suggesting.
Well, it is. It's like this. The term income has been defined in the Eisner versus McCumber case as a corporate gain or profit. See, so income
corporate gain or profit.
Yeah, it's not wages.
So if you don't income, you don't make an income either.
That's part of the fascism. You see, the government works with the big corporations, and so they've taken all the taxing responsibility primarily away from the corporations of the American. Yeah. Us. But the truth is that corporations are subject to a tax, and it's legal and it's proper. Because a corporation is a privilege granted by the government to form this corporation. The concept of no tax people is that the founding fathers understood and the Supreme Court understood that each one of us owns our own life. I don't own you, and you don't own me, and the government doesn't. That way for, and so the fact is that we own our life, and so because we own our lives, we own our labor. And so if I give me something in return, it's an exchange. Something I own with something they own, and we're making an exchange. Definitely. It's not a gain.
It's consideration.
It's not a profit. It's not a gain. It's an exchange between two entities.
Right.
And that's the thought that if they could tax your labor, then ultimately you're going to become a slave. Because your labor is for you and your family.
In fact, what's the difference between a slave and a wage?
Is also someone who is forced to behave in other ways, which is what we're coming to. But
you don't have to be black anymore to be a slave.
No,
that's what.
No.
They opened up the boundaries. So.
Yeah. Great governments of the world. So like you have the euro now and the euro constitution. Bush has made an agreement with Mexico and Canada that this join one country. Yeah. Lou Dobbs ran this story. It's amazing. Really? And it's not in the press anywhere except Lou Dobbs ran it.
Form one country?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Totally and completely. It's great. It's the truth.
Now I understand more why.
Lou Dobbs is a fairly honest guy, you know?
Oh, yeah.
He's being honest and sincere. And I just put that clip in my movie where Lou Dobbs is talking about it. Yeah, it's in has to go in the movie, and so it'll be in the movie when the movie's released Friday. It'll be in there, but it wasn't in the version you saw.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Okay.
And so
I'm gonna have to get a copy.
it was accomplished. On World 2008, every person in America has to have a national ID card. Come May 2008.
You mean that's a past statute?
That's a law passed and signed by. We'll get that. So the is the so everybody's gonna carry this national ID.
Of course, that's a rescindable law, isn't it?
Everything's rescindable. I mean, you can stop anything.
Well,
you
right
want.
now, basically, you're saying, Aaron, that so many people are paying taxes because language will.
No, when you sign up for your 1040, you're voluntarily doing that. You see, so you're entering the system voluntarily.
How does one pull themselves out once they see that there's a fraudulent act?
Make it more about the state that's emerging and showing how the IRS is really part of the police state, and then they make you pay the tax by force, that there is no law. That's the point I'm trying. I'm not people. It's up to you. You know,
What you're doing is finding the underwording, if you will,
yeah, the
of
subtext.
why people are paying it. Right,
exactly. I'm letting people know what the truth is, and so
that's
no different than if you had a retail store somewhere, some mafia guy came with you and said, "Listen, I want $2,000 a month, and I'll make sure nobody hurts you," and you know, right? It's the protection. If you don't pay them, they're going to try and hurt you, and they put out that publicity in that press to scare people into compliance. But ask them to show you the law. I asked them. I asked him, well, what about all these Supreme Court decisions? And he was backed into a corner. See, first he said the 16th Amendment is based, the income tax based on, I said, and there's 8.
And that's ratified.
Yeah, that as well. But I didn't want to get into that point.
Okay.
Because once the Supreme Court said it,
that overrules.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter about the application.
Yeah.
Right? So I was going
right
to the car.
Yeah.
I said, well, what do you mean the Supreme Court's a silly argument? Why is that a silly argument? And he says, Supreme Court decisions are not. So the IRS is above the law. They're the Supreme Court.
The Supreme law of the land.
They're trumping the Supreme Court in his words. And so you know right away. The whole
thin. Definitely.
Arrogance came out, you know, because they couldn't answer.
Foolishness.
Yeah, and they couldn't answer the questions.
Who in the world could say that? Agency is being.
If you know that, ever bring it up. So when I hit him with it in the interview, he didn't know where to go. He had no answers for that. Because if he said, well, oh my, you know, if he said, I didn't do that, then he had to say that. And so that the whole situation and the Federal Reserve situation are joined together. But the ultimate point of the movie is that because of these American by me, they're going to check all around. As you're driving across the country, they can stop you and check you, just like in Nazi Germany. Okay, and then it says on the law for the ID card, device, which will be what's called ID chip, radio frequency identification, and RFID chips